Hello, my name is Abigail Williams, and my speech today is going to be over shock. This is my beautiful audience and my beautiful camera holder, Alexis. Okay, so my speech is over shock, and the body goes into shock when it's reacting to a severe trauma. So it's when it's in a life-threatening condition, and it's also shock is when the body does not have enough blood flow going through it. So there's different types of shock, and one of the different types of shock is called neurogenic shock. It's caused by when you have damage done to your nervous system. So it can be caused by if you get in a bad car wreck, or if you get into, like I said, a bad car wreck, or if when they're going to give you like a spinal tap, or when you get a epidural done, if they mess it up when they're putting it in the area, then you can go into neurogenic shock. And so that all has to be done very well and by a trained professional, or you can go into shock and then your body can start to shut down. So then there's anaphylactic shock. Anaphylactic shock is it is caused by when you have a allergic reaction. So it's like when you're allergic to shellfish or peanuts or fish, and you eat that or you come in contact with it, and then your body reacts poorly and you go into shock that way. Most people that go into anaphylactic shock know that they're allergic to something, and so if they're allergic to bees, they usually learn at a young age, and most of them have an EpiPen. And so if they go into anaphylactic shock and you're around someone that has that, you can usually grab their EpiPen for them, and most of them have the instructions on the side, and some of them even have it where it will say the instructions out loud so you can help them, and then you need to call medical attention to come and get them. So then there's cardiogenic shock, and that is it's when you have heart problems, and normally it's caused by when you have a severe heart attack and your heart muscle is weakened, and so it's not pumping enough blood through your body. And since shock is when you don't have enough blood going through you, cardiogenic shock is when your heart, when it's not pumping enough blood to get through your body. Then there is septic shock, and septic shock is when it's caused by an infection. So sepsis, severe sepsis, and then septic shock. You're more susceptible to septic shock if you are very young, a young child, or when you're an elder. You also are very susceptible to it when you have an open wound, say you're in the hospital and you come out of the hospital, or while you're out in the woods or wherever and you get a cut and you get an infection in it, you're more likely to get sepsis or septic shock, So then there is hypovolemic shock. It's caused by too little blood volume. So it's usually if you are too dehydrated and you don't have enough water in your body, or if you have a huge amount of blood loss, which is if you get in a car wreck and it hits an artery or a major vein or artery, then you could be losing too much blood and you could go into that type of shock. 1 in 5 people die from shock. If you know someone, or if you're out and about and you see someone and they're going into shock, you need to get medical attention immediately. Some of the symptoms for shock are they can have anxiety, they can be kind of restless, maybe even a little bit agitated. They want you to get away, but you may be able to tell that they need help. They may have bluish lips, fingertips or toes, and that's blood is not getting to the extremities, and so it's not going where it needs to go, so they're starting to lose blood in the ends. They can be confused, they can be dizzy, they can be pale, and they're usually clammy, so they're very sweaty. They can't stop sweating profusely. They'll have a rapid pulse, but it is also very, very weak because they're losing blood. They don't have enough blood going through them. They may have shallow breathing, and sometimes they can even be unconscious, and that's when it gets dangerous. So first aid needs to be applied to anyone that is going through any type of shock. So the first thing that you need to do is call 911 if you notice that someone is going into shock. After you know that they're going into shock, you need to kind of look over them and see where they're hurt. If it's their head, their back, their legs. If they've got an open wound, try to apply first aid to the wound. So if they're bleeding, apply pressure If they're good all over, and once you've got them checked, you need to also check and make sure that they're breathing and that their airway is not blocked. And if they're not breathing, you need to go ahead and do CPR and try to get them breathing again. If they are okay and you don't see any injuries in their head and their back is not injured, then you can go ahead and put them in what they call the shock position. It's where they lay on their back flat and you lift their feet up 12 inches off the ground. If their back is hurt or their legs are hurt, do not do this. But if you can, lift them up 12 inches off the ground, so that's 1 foot. But if it starts to hurt them, you need to stop immediately and let them lay back down. If they are unconscious and they're drooling, or if they're vomiting, you need to make sure that if they're okay, their head and back is not hurting, you can lean their head to the side, and so all of it will spill out. If they're unconscious and they can't tell you that they're okay, or if you know that their back or their head is hurt, then you need to do a log roll. So you need to keep them completely in line and roll them over as their body in one unit. Do not separate it, because that can mess them up and it can make things much worse than they already are. So try your best to not make shock worse and not anger or upset any of the symptoms anymore. So that was my speech for today, and thank you for listening.